All right, my name is Jaime Trost. I'm the captain of the Schooner Lynx, and I've been sailing traditionally for about 12 years. I actually grew up on Lake Erie and started sailing as a young kid on family boats, small keel boats, dinghies, things of that nature. And right after college, I started sailing as a deckhand on a schooner out of Erie Harbor. And for most of the last 12 years, that's what I've been doing. For the past year and a half, I've been involved with the Lynx Education Foundation as a captain, trading off again and on again with other captains in a regular rotation. Lynx is a spectacular vessel because she represents one of the most exciting and interesting classes of vessel that I've ever had anything to do with, and that's the Baltimore schooner, or sometimes called Baltimore Clipper. The Baltimore Clippers are distinctive from the dock for their raked mast, but they have a lot more to offer as a sailing vessel than just the distinctive profile that they show off at the dock. They're a very handy rig, most of them that are sailing today. They're a topsail schooner, so there's square topsail on the foremast and fore and aft rigged elsewhere on the ship. Very difficult combination of sail for chafe and wear, and they require a lot of seamanship to handle all of those facets of sailing them and sailing them well. The real secret to them is the hull. They changed from a design of the late 16 and early 1700s of a very round bilged bottom, a very cargo hauling ship in the Chesapeake Bay, which is a long winding estuary itself with dozens of tributaries all winding their way off of that central body of the drowned Susquehanna River. They changed the hull to accommodate that geography. And instead of that round bilge, they took a very sharp dead rise, a high dead rise, and a deep V, and then rounded it out with a little bit of flare at the deck in order to carry a lot of cargo on deck, but have a slim profile below decks. And they also developed facets of rake in the hull, from the stem down and from the stern post down to a long dragging keel. The boat represents a very deep V in that regard. And out of necessity, this ship developed the capability to be very maneuverable, to have very little resistance to forward motion and tremendous resistance to sideways motion. The folks in the Chesapeake Bay probably didn't understand anything except that this was a very handy ship to get up and down the bay with and into all the little tributaries and estuaries that they had to work their cargoes and ferries and all the different craft that they were plying up these bodies of water. But when the War of 1812 broke out, and from the state of New Hampshire all the way down to the state of Georgia, people were launching privateers to go to sea with letters of marque and reprisal that allowed them to take captive and sell for profit enemy ships, British ships. The boats out of the Chesapeake Bay were head and shoulders above everything else that was launched on the east coast of America because of that design. The technological revolution hadn't been realized until it was compared to other vessels that were sailing, and they still today in the traditional world stand head and shoulders above the other boats that are out there sailing with the more traditional hull shapes, and can even point as high and sail as fast as a lot of modern cruising yachts. So tremendously interesting and very, very, very challenging, but also very rewarding vessels to sail in. And the successes that hull and those privateers that were sailing under that hull out of Baltimore represents ultimately is intrinsically tied into our national anthem, because the British were so incensed by the successes of the Baltimore privateers that in their 1814 invasion of the Chesapeake Bay, they made it a goal to sail up into the Patapsco River and burn down the shipyards of Fells Point that were building these vessels. Because of staunch defenses on land at Hempstead Hill, which is now Patterson Park, and Fort McHenry in the outer harbor of Baltimore, the British were unable to get into the inner harbor of Baltimore, into the Fells Point region, and instead had to sail away with their heads hung in defeat. And the sight of them sailing away and the smoke clearing from the battle was capped off by the 15-stripe, 15-star American ensign, the largest one in the whole country at 32 by 40 feet, being raised over the fort in the early morning of September 14th, 1814. And that gave inspiration to a Georgetown lawyer named Francis Scott Key to write down the poetry that later became our national anthem. And so Lynx sails as a direct representative to that history and to the history of the brave individuals who launched these daring privateers back in the early part of America's lifespan. we take that history and present it to young people all over the East Coast and West Coast of America. And so not only do we get to sail around on an extremely rewarding, extremely fast and versatile boat, we get to share the story of why these boats were so successful with a whole new generation of people.
Awesome. Great.
The Schooner Lynx is 122 feet over spars. That's from the tip of the jib boom all the way back to the end of the main boom. The length on deck is 78 feet. And in typical Baltimore schooner fashion, the length of the water line is only about 70 feet, and the length of the keel is only about 60 feet. So that taper that I spoke about earlier really shows in her design. The height of the mast is 94 feet. She spreads roughly 5,000 square feet of canvas, which is a tremendous amount, and she draws about 9 feet.
Awesome. Okay, that's good.
We need anything else?
No,
Oh, no, absolutely.
awesome.
Oh, great.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.